Well, as the saying goes, that's not all, folks. Yes, we've passed dead day for bills in the House and Senate, but nothing is truly dead, as my friend Abdul here has said many times, until sine die, the old insider term for the end of the session. Abdul Hakim Shabazz, Brian Gaddy, our political insiders, joining us once again as we review this past week. And before we get to all the goings on in Ukraine and how that is going to relate to Indiana, let's talk about this past week and the resurrection of constitutional carry. First of all, as a lot of us suspected, this bill, which died officially in the Senate, is now back in the form of another bill, Senate Bill 209. The language carried over. And just so we make sure that we have our P's and Q's here, Abdul, is this the identical version that passed the House and not the amended version that came out in the Senate later?
Yeah, this is a version that, for the most part, basically passed the House of Representatives. What they did was called a strip and insert. Now, all you 13-year-old boys who watch this at home can kind of laugh and chuckle at that. But basically, what a strip and insert means that you take the language out of one bill and you insert new language into it. And so basically, that's what Indiana lawmakers did, because when they amended the Senate bill, there were some procedural constitutional issues with what they did, and so it really wasn't going to work without getting too far into the weeds. But now it's just a matter of the Senate passing that legislation and the House concurring.
Strip and insert has nothing to do with those raids that we had on the news this past week either, just
exactly.
so we're clear. Now, again, perfectly legal procedure. Brian Gaddy, of course, Democrats are not happy because this bill was thought to be dead. Again, constitutional carry, for those who don't know, this would essentially end the requirement that you have a permit to carry a handgun in the state of Indiana. But, Brian, not a lot that Democrats can do about it.
Well, not now, because obviously we're in the super minority, but it's a shell game the Republicans are playing, trying to move this language over into another bill. But the fact is, constitutional carry is an issue that we don't really need, not just in Indiana, but I don't think it's necessary anywhere in the country. We do have a Second Amendment. Democrats do believe in the Second Amendment, but as long as Hoosiers have the right to carry guns with a permit, why do we need to upset that apple cart? You have not heard any Democrat anywhere say that we're against the Second Amendment rights of Hoosiers, but Hoosiers could exercise those Second Amendment rights with a gun permit. So I don't understand. To me, this is another one of those solutions in search of a problem. Hoosiers have the right to carry guns. Democrats support that. We don't need constitutional carry in this state.
Abdul, this would seem to make it smooth sailing for this bill for Republicans, because even if the governor decided to veto it, we don't know what Governor Holcomb would do. Republicans have the supermajority, and they only need a simple majority to override the veto.
Right. Indiana has a weak constitutional governor, which means it only takes a simple majority to override the governor's veto. Now, we did ask him in sort of the media gaggle this week about would he sign constitutional carry. He said he had some concerns. Obviously, he said he'll look at the bill, look at the final version of it, then make a decision from there. But I would not be surprised if the Holcomb administration has a couple other, say, minor tricks up their sleeve, because law enforcement, for the most part, 80% of law enforcement in the state of Indiana is concerned about permitless carry. So I would not be surprised if the governor's administration has a trick or two up their sleeve yet to be played out.
Now, Abdul, while we saw constitutional carry come back, it appears that we're not going to see the same thing with House Bill 1134 regarding what teachers say about certain topics in the classroom. At least that's based on what Speaker Houston, Senate Leader Bray said this week after a rally that was held this week by the Indiana State Teachers Association and some civil rights groups. Abdul, why do you think that bill was not able to move forward? Again, with always the proviso that something could happen next week that we don't know about. Why was that bill not to be able to move forward while constitutional carry seems to be going through very smoothly, or at least somewhat smoothly?
Well, actually, I'll argue for both reasons. Folks have a good lobby. The Second Amendment folks have a good lobby, and the teachers union here in Indiana, they have a good lobby as well. And what they did was they had teachers from each individual district approach lawmakers, which is sort of different than what they've done in the past. Yes, they had their big rallies, yes, but for example, if I have teachers from the Huntington School District up north, and I get those Huntington teachers to talk to my state lawmakers, it's a whole lot different ball of wax when you're engaging in lawmakers face to face, and not getting in their face and yelling and screaming, but being reasonable and being logical. And I think that's what really killed 1134. Also, the fact that no one, I still argue that no one really knows what the heck critical race theory actually is, unless you're in law school or graduate school. And so there was some confusion as to what critical race theory actually was to begin with.
Can this still be an issue, Brian, that would help Democrats at the ballot box this year? Even though the bill died, that's what Democrats wanted to happen. That's what the Indiana State Teachers Association, a large, mostly Democratic constituency. But how do you translate this into getting more of what Democrats would like to see by winning elections?
Absolutely. Well, I think it can be an issue for us because the Indiana State Teacher Association is a very strong supporter of the Indiana Democratic Party. We Indiana Democrats are very strong supporters of teachers, and we just need to be able to promote the issue for Hoosiers that Indiana Democrats support teachers. We do not support the efforts of Indiana Republicans to try to tie the hands of teachers and try to tell teachers what they should teach in the classroom. So if we bring that issue forward as Hoosier Democrats, I think we can get a lot of teachers out to vote for us, and we can really make the Republicans pay for what they're trying to do. And to my good friend Abdul's point, CRT is not being taught in grade schools, high schools, unless, like I've said before, I'll say it again, unless you're fifth graders in law school, you've got nothing to worry about. So we need to make that point abundantly clear to Hoosiers. CRT is not being taught in grade schools, and Republicans are using this as a wedge issue to try to get their voters out.
At the same time, Abdul, it would seem that Republicans may have done themselves a favor electorally because they can now, I don't know if they do this in campaign commercials, but in stump speeches and when they're campaigning, they can say, hey, look at us. We listened to teachers. We did what you wanted.
Or the reverse, Republicans who are in favor of the legislation say, hey, look, we tried to get it done, but it couldn't happen. So it's six in one hand, my friend, half a dozen in the other. It just depends on your perspective.
Abdul Hakim Shabazz, Brian Gaddy, our WRTV political insiders with us. Now let's move on to Ukraine and how that is going to impact us here in Indiana. Of course, an awful situation. There's not enough that can be said about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, unprovoked, what's going on, but how that's reverberating around the world and how that will reverberate in Indiana is a big question. Brian, one way we do know that it's reverberating is gas prices. They are soaring. And we were warned that that was going to happen, and it doesn't look like there's any end to that. Now, I know Democrats nationally have tried to make a lot about or talk a lot about the economic recovery over the past year under President Biden and some of the steps that the Biden administration took during that economic recovery. How does rising gas prices, taking more money out of our pockets, impact that argument moving forward, especially in a midterm election year?
Well, if you remember from President Biden's State of the Union address, he aggressively talked about inflation. He talked about the fact that his administration knows it's an issue. We know that it's hitting Americans in their pocketbooks, but the fact is that we've created a lot of jobs as Democrats under President Biden with the American Rescue Plan, and there's no doubt about it. The economy is in a much stronger position than it was at the start of the pandemic. So we're doing a great job as Democrats with really promoting the economic issues that Hoosiers face every single day. Not just Hoosiers, but Americans face every single day. Now, to your point about Ukraine, there's no doubt about it. We get so much oil, obviously, from overseas. 7% of the oil that we receive comes from Russia. There's senators actually on both sides of the aisle that are talking about what we need to do to try to limit the amount of oil we get from Russia. That's going to be something that we're going to have to look at because Vladimir Putin is actually financing his war against Ukraine. A lot of it's coming from from the money that he's getting from selling Russian oil across the world, including 7% that comes to our country. So we got to do something about that.
Republicans, I think, electorally, Abdul, would probably see this, and this is a tough issue to have a position on because certainly you would want to side with the people of Ukraine, with democracy, but at the same time, you're trying to win elections. Republicans are trying to win control of Congress, for example, this November. So what kind of balance are we going to see between them making the argument that we need to do more here at home about oil prices, we need to do more about inflation, while at the same time acknowledging that a lot of that, at least in the coming months, is probably going to be caused by what Russia's doing?
Well, you bring up an interesting point because you got a couple different dynamics going on here. on the one hand, you have the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, which is horrible in itself. And I got to give some major credit to 5th District Congresswoman Victoria Sparks, because she's sort of become, the face of the Ukrainian sort of spirit people, because she is Ukrainian born. So that's kind of point number one. Point number two, on the other hand, is how do we are going to go to war in Ukraine. We're not going to send ground troops into Ukraine. That's not going to happen. So the question is, how do you sort of strap the Russians financially? And the best way to do it is to cap off their oil supply. But if you do it, then once again, gas prices are going to go through the roof. So I think the question is, not just for Republicans, but for Democrats and for the American people, to be brutally honest with you, is, are you willing to pay more in gas prices to stop the Russian onslaught? I mean, that in a nutshell, that's what the question is. And to be honest with you, I don't know what that answer is just yet, because like I said, we haven't really fully felt the effect of Russian oil sort of being off the market. But once that does happen, gas prices go up, then I think you'll see some major changes.
We also, Abdul, have two distinct, although one part of the Republican Party has been noticeably silent, or more silent of late, as opposed to, say, a week or two ago. You have two parts of the Republican Party. You have one that, for lack of a better term, was quite pro-Russian, at least, again, before the invasion. And the head of that part of the Republican Party would be the former president, Donald Trump, which people have gone out of their way to not alienate Donald Trump if you have an R by your name and you're an elected official. On the other hand, you have some of the actions and some of what Governor Holcomb talked about this week. You also have legislation moving through the General Assembly right now, in which Indiana would make sure that Russian investments are not having an impact here in Indiana, and that we are doing all that we can as a state to distance ourselves from Russia. My question is, I guess, which side of the Republican Party is going to win out here?
Like I said, my friend, that's going to play out over the course of the next couple of months, because Donald Trump actually put out a news release basically saying that that he was the reason that Russia didn't invade Ukraine in the first place, back when he was president, because he had a great relationship with Vladimir Putin. So you take that for whatever it is. My thing is this: you can't let naked aggression stand. It's just that simple. And to codify, Vladimir Putin, like some of the far right activists have done, is just ridiculous and silly. Because I never thought I'd live to see the day in America where the Russians were the good guys and the FBI was the bad guys.
Brian, what does this mean for Democrats moving forward? Obviously, Democrats are united, or they appear to be united right now on this issue. And they're also marching in lockstep with a lot of Republicans, particularly in Washington right now. But when it comes election time, the temptation is going to be there to pull out those Donald Trump quotes and talk about how Donald Trump was on the side of Russia. Look, here he is praising Vladimir Putin. Here he was when he was president, withholding defense money from Ukraine in an effort to get election lies out of Ukraine about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. How do Democrats handle this issue moving forward?
How do we handle it? We just tell the truth. We just show that the fact the Republican Party has this dichotomy within its ranks. You've got the obsequious wing of the Republican Party, which I call the Putin lapdog wing, which is the Donald Trump portion. Those Republicans, when I hear these Republicans say, Putin would have never invaded Ukraine if Trump was still president, that's because Trump would have handed Ukraine on a silver platter to Putin. All I have to tell those Republicans is Helsinki, the Helsinki summit, where Putin left out of there like a cat who swallowed a canary, and Trump looked like a whipped dog. You could see Trump had his lunch handed to him by Putin. So that is something that we as Democrats need to point out to not just Hoosiers, but to Americans, that Trump would have never stood up to Putin. This would have never, the invasion wouldn't have happened because he would have handed Ukraine over to Putin on a silver platter. Now, those other Republicans that are standing with us Democrats against this naked aggression from Putin invading Ukraine, that's great. I'm glad these Republicans are standing with us. But how long will that last? Because let's face it, the inertia in the Republican Party is toward the Trump orbit, and that's basically who runs the Republican Party now.
Who knows where we will be on this or any other issue just a few days from now, but we will talk about it 1 week from now with our political insiders, Brian Gaddy, Abdul Hakim Shabazz. Always good to see you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.